Hi, I'm Jason Gorber for BestBuy.ca, and we're here to talk about the Devialet Phantom 1 Gold. So let's get this off the bat. This is a beast of a speaker. It's ostensibly meant to be the be-all and the end-all of wireless speakers. It promises loads of connectivity, high-resolution audio output, all coming from this massive thing that looks like a giant eyeball. It's got this gold stuff on the side. It weighs a preposterous amount. It's super heavy, super dense. If you look at the specifications, it's something like 108 decibels that it's supposed to output. On the front, titanium tweeter. Inside is another driver, and the side are essentially bass radiators, plastic bass radiators. They're not actually speaker drivers per se. They're basically taking the air that's inside the enclosure and putting them out, like many speakers and other elements do. If you look at how the how it's marketed, how it's actually presented, this really does look like the absolute apotheosis of what you're going to get in a wireless speaker. It promises connectivity for all the main streaming services. It has Ethernet built in, Wi-Fi, it has an optical input, and it works with Spotify Connect, which means that it actually shows up as a device for those of you that use Spotify. It has AirPlay, it has UPnP for playing music off of a server. It has Tidal support. It has all of these elements that it promises, and it has Bluetooth 5.0 support. It gets extremely loud. If you're looking for something that actually is there to sort of in this tiny unit to actually blare, it does a really, really good job at that. Its sound is actually quite remarkable in one facet, namely that despite the fact that it's sort of coming straight out of the front, the off-axis sound is actually quite good, which means if you sort of put it where it's kind of meant to be, sort of on a counter in the midst of your kitchen or somewhere in the living room where it's meant to sort of radiate sound out like it's sort of a relatively round space, it actually does a very, very good job of that. So as it stands, it's like, oh my god, this is going to be fantastic. We're going to dance around the fact that this is obviously a premium product at a premium price. Its competition is on the sort of high-end market is not so robust, but if you go substantially down, there's loads and loads of Bluetooth speakers you can get that for most people do a pretty good job. So what's going to set this apart, obviously, is how loud it gets and how good it sounds getting loud. Just getting loud doesn't really do anything if it, does the trick. I threw as much at this as I could, as I had the time to do it. I did everything from jazz to hip-hop to classical to classic rock to folk, just to see how it actually behaved. It connects in a fairly straightforward way. Around the back there's sort of this light up button. You actually put your hand on it to actually ensure that you're pairing it when you actually using the app. The app is really just a very straightforward setup guide, nothing too advanced, and it all connects along with this sort of volume doohickey thing, this little puck that as I dial, the volume numbers actually change, and I can do track left or right, up or down as it were, and play and pause right from this. So you can put your speaker somewhere, you put this near your listening location and it goes there. Or of course, you're going to be using your mobile device for most of the stuff that you're actually doing using their actual app. Now, who is this for? Is this meant to replace a 2-channel setup, an actual hi-fi setup? It doesn't really do a great job of that. It's a single speaker. You can, of course, get 2 speakers. You can get 2 of these and pair them and create a stereo pair. And I personally would have loved to have heard 2 of these. That being said, when you look at what it takes to get one of these, to have 2 of them, your options are now dramatically enlarged as to what you can get. This is how it sits. There are optional accessories that you can get for a little tripod or an actual sort of regular speaker stand. But again, some of those run more than just most standalone Bluetooth speakers. This is, as I said, a premium product. I have no problem with premium products as long as they provide premium quality sound reproduction and all of those other elements that are promised. It's super weird how this is actually based. They have a built-in amplifier, which is this hybrid between a Class A and a Class D. It doesn't really matter what all that means, but it does mean that you can pound out a heck of a lot of wattage out of such a small capacity, and getting it, you know, loud, room-filling noise. So many Bluetooth speakers are so anemic on that front. You are definitely getting quite a bit of volume on this. But what you're not always getting is the best sound that you might expect for something that is premium like this. It promises, it says that the amplifier inside actually allows you to go for 24-bit 96 kilohertz files, which sounds amazing. Most people are never going to play those files, but for audiophile nutbars like me, that actually means that I could play in its sort of raw form any of the high resolution tracks that I get either via download when I buy things like vinyl. Occasionally they include high resolution downloads or stuff that you can buy from services like HD Tracks. It allows me to hypothetically play at the highest resolution possible. That being said, I can't transmit directly unless I go through optical with disabling a bunch of stuff. There's a whole complicated way that we won't get into, but basically in terms of everyday operation, I'm limited to 2448, which again, for most people doesn't really matter. But for those where it does matter, it's kind of frustrating that you're getting basically half the kilohertz capabilities that you're getting essentially downsampled. More than that, when I played back the difference between 2448 raw, FLAC, or even a WAV file, I'm doing it over Bluetooth, and the Bluetooth implementation on this, while it's Bluetooth 5, does not have things like aptX HD or LDAC or one of the other sort of foundational Bluetooth elements that provide lossless function in a much higher bit rate than this will accept, which again is a little bit weird. It does aptX, it doesn't do aptX HD. It fundamentally doesn't do something that I really wish it did, which is to have an analog input. You put an analog input in this, I'm jumping up and down about how excellent this speaker is, because that would entirely future-proof it. If I have an analog input, I can get the output from any device I want, from my portable DAC, my turntable preamp, as long as that is at line level. Even my phone. If I had an ability to sort of bypass entirely what was in here, that would be phenomenal. The only bypass they have, as I said, is optical, which again, super frustrating. You have this thing that absolutely could be just an incredibly powerful, powered speaker and do a great job at that. But really, it's this sort of, again, it's a hybrid amplifier, but it's also a hybrid implementation, where you're not getting the best of the best of the best in terms of Bluetooth implementation, in terms of app implementation, in terms of all this stuff, while it's certainly sort of leading that it's presenting that it's sort of at that higher end level. These might sound like nitpicks. They might sound, I know so many people have really loved these models. It's gotten some tremendous applause from many people out there that have had it, but I just found the whole enterprise to be a little bit challenging. If what it was simply presented as a really, really, really good Bluetooth speaker, fine. But it has all these other elements that present that you're going to get the best and most remarkable sound ever out of a single unit, that this is all you're going to get. A much reduced yet stereo pair of Bluetooth speakers will immediately have better imaging than what you're going to get from this. This is a single source. Now, I tried mono recordings on these, and it was fantastic. Of course, you have a single speaker, single source stuff. I listen to Kind of Blue mono, I listen to Pet Sounds, I listen to a number of tracks in mono, straight up from Spotify, or any of the other streaming services like Tidal, and it did a very good job of reproducing that and making that sound wide and spacious. When I played stereo elements, it again sounded fine, but I was missing that sense of that width that you get with even the smallest of stereo pairs that you get. You simply cannot get that without sort of jumping up to buying two of these. And again, when you buy two of these, we have many other things that you could be looking at within this bracket. It does a pretty good job overall of reproducing music. It is not phenomenal. It is very good. It lacks a certain punch in the low mids, and it's one of the hardest things to actually reproduce. It's what higher end speakers actually sort of aim to do. If you listen to cello music, if you listen to especially female vocals, if you listen to that sort of that mid-rangey human voice slash the warmth, this really doesn't have the impact that I would have hoped for from this model. It does a very good job of getting the high frequencies, and the low frequencies, it does some interesting things. Now I'm going to do something, I'm not sure how well this is going to work on video. I actually have a frequency generator here, and this is one thing that we can actually do when testing it. Normally you would never listen to this. This is not something that normal people do. But when you're testing something like this, it actually allows you to dial in some of the limitations and some of the things that the speaker does well. This promises that it goes down to something like 11 hertz, which is infrasonic, which is insane. I have a 16-inch subwoofer over there that claims to have similar specs, that's running 3,000 watt amp. Whatever is going on, this is it lists on the spec sheet about how low it goes, as if you're going to get from a unit like this as much as you're going to get from a dedicated subwoofer. Now, you're going to get way more bass on this than you are the vast majority of wireless speakers. It's great, but it does not replace a dedicated subwoofer. It simply doesn't, or at least a quality one. I'm going to show you what it does here. You can actually see as this is sort of kicking out. This is me playing a 13 hertz sound. Now 13 hertz is technically below human hearing, but you're hearing a little bit of hum. You can probably hear that in the mic, but there's also somewhat rattling. The actual system itself does some rattling. If I go down to 8 hertz, which is again preposterous, you can see them moving out slowly at 8 times a second. I can go all the way down 5 hertz. Here they are moving. You get absolutely no noise, nor should I. But even here, if I crank this up, and we'll see how this actually works here, I'm getting these weird sort of plasticky kicks. This is at full volume here. I am not getting anything in my chest. I'm not getting any thumping. And I'm in a sound-treated room here. This is my music room. In a kitchen environment, which is much wider space, I wasn't getting anything. Even if I go up to something here, now I'm at 48 hertz, and I'm definitely getting some bass sort of feeling in my chest and all of that stuff. All the way up here to 64 hertz. And yeah, I am definitely getting a bunch of boom here, which is great. Now, what does that matter in terms of everyday listening? In a room where I have a soundproof door, where I'm in a closed environment, I was getting some bass thump, which is great. Some, but it was overwhelmed by, at that volume, that's almost maximum volume, at that volume I was being overwhelmed by how piercing the high end was. I found at low volume this really didn't do such a good job. It really didn't sound very musical. You really had to crank it to half or a third, and by that time it was almost too loud to listen to. It's a real fine line. By the time you got that you're getting a more rounded, more sense of that bass, more sense of the stuff that's actually coming in, by that time I just found it so fatiguing to actually listen to. So look, this is going to sound relatively negative. I don't mean it to be. I just want to be realistic about what this thing really is. If this is going to sit on your counter and just be the sort of general sort of Bluetoothy speaker that's there, I think it does a really good job. I think that it's frustrating that it doesn't do stuff internally the way that I wish it would. Yes, for Spotify Connect, I can do that. I can do Spotify Connect, start playing something and walk away. I don't have to have my phone anywhere near it. But for everything else, from UPnP to Tidal to everything else, it's all through Bluetooth. In other words, my phone has to be here. If I'm having a party and I walk away or I go to another floor in my house, I'm going to have some transmission issues to hear unless my phone is sort of stuck there. And that's a little bit frustrating. There's enough processing power in here that I would love to be able to just tell it what to play, and it uses Wi-Fi and Spotify to draw it from my services. Let me put my username and password for the applications inside here. Make this that kind of Android device that this becomes the hub. That I'm using my mobile device to tell it what to do, not my mobile device to transmit it what to do. And that's a fundamental for me, issue with this kind of product. There are others that do exactly that, that allow you to basically use a whole home system and say, just play. And then it's smart enough to sort of draw over the internet the stuff that it needs to do. And your phone is basically a communicating tool to it. I'm calling it to say, hey, do this. And then this is the one. That way, if my reception isn't great on my phone, this Ethernet connection is going to do everything that I need it to do to pull the best internet from wherever I'm located. This could be in a position of really terrible Wi-Fi. My phone's in a position of really terrible Wi-Fi, and I'm having to Bluetooth from here. If the Wi-Fi is bad, I'm just not going to get anything in here, even if I have Ethernet ready to go. So, should you consider something like this? This is, as I said, a very high-end thing. I would definitely give it a listen. I would consider where it's going to be located, as it's incredibly robust and heavy, but all things considered, for the sound that you're getting out of a model like this, you're getting a lot of bang for this sort of space. So if this was something to sort of sit on a countertop in the corner of a room, I think it would be a really good job. I know many people actually set these up as their main speakers, like a single one or a pair of them in a critical listening room. I personally would probably go a different direction than going with something like this. Even if you want powered speakers, there are many alternatives to actually consider within the range of this, that I would rather get sort of a standalone model, standalone amplification, or a standalone Bluetooth receiver or a streaming box that then connects to some sort of powered output if you want, or some sort of receiver speaker combination. That is definitely the way that I would personally go. That being said, if you are interested in something that basically is plug it in, have a go with your phone, if none of the limitations that I talked about matter to you, if none of the sort of vagaries of high resolution audio, if you're just going to be plopping Spotify into this and want something that's a lot better than the vast majority of sort of standalone Bluetooth speakers, definitely consider this one. Just for me, it looked like it was going to solve so many issues that I've had with the sort of push towards powered streaming mobile wireless devices. I thought this would be the sort of high-end solution that I've been waiting years for, frankly, something that just did high-resolution audio that allowed me to basically divorce my mobile device from it and just have it be the best possible solution for what I want, being able to stream that stuff, and it just does not live up to what admittedly are high expectations. But if you present something as the best of the best, I'm going to have high expectations for it. Well, there you are for BestBuy.ca. I'm Jason Gorber. Thanks so much for watching. Please check out our other videos, and we will see you next time. All the best. Take care.